We're just about ready to get started, so Richard, whenever you're ready to cue up that prelude.
I've been
Good morning. Welcome to Minnesota Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. My name is Laura. I'm the lead minister here. As we're all just taking some time to arrive from our weeks of whatever our week brought for us, I just want to invite everybody just to take a breath, maybe 2 or 3 breaths with me, and settle into this space and arrive here. You don't have to leave behind whatever you're bringing. It's welcome here. Just breathe in and feel held in community. It's good to be with you all this morning. A couple of announcements before we begin. The summer unison is out. We're just doing one for the summer, so do check that out. There are a couple new things going on in there. I know Jeannie, our office manager, is put up a new postcard sending program. Check that out. Maybe that's something you can do this summer to help stay connected with folks. And there's some other good news. Some of the services are listed in there as well. I might add, as usual, that all of those are pending, of course, because things happen and sometimes topics change. So keep that in mind. Also keep in mind, as it's summer, that staff are not as available as they usually were. Andrea's off right now. Maria will be off fairly soon. The music staff are off. And I will be on vacation and study leave June 15th through July 10th, and then again the last week of July and first week of August, because I've got some time that had built up that I need to make sure that I'm using. So do be aware of that as well as we kind of go into summer mode. One thing that I did do, given what's going on right now, was those of you that saw in the Friday email, and look on our Facebook page, it's also there. I did make a new Facebook group. If you're not on Facebook, if no other reason to be on Facebook right now, it's to stay connected with some of the things and events that are going on. It's also a good place to look at pictures of cats and your grandchildren. So I recommend it for that as well. If you have grandchildren, I don't yet, but it's good for that as well. But I made a new Facebook group that's MVUUF Social Action and Racial Justice Group, because there are so many resources going around that people want to share or discussions that they want to have, and I just wanted to make a space for that to happen. So that can happen around any justice issues that are going on right now. I realize anti-racism is a big thing right now, and people are looking for spaces to share lots of events and resources and questions and readings and clips, and it's just one space that we can do that all together. So do check that out and do use that space to share resources and have discussions with one another. For today's service, so I had plotted out to do a series on the 7 principles this summer, and our first principle is the inherent to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And I was going to, write things and write a sermon, and then I thought the best way for me to promote and affirm the inherent worth and dignity of folks right now is to decenter my whiteness and my voice, and instead lift up some voices of Black folks who are going through an awful lot right now, and honor the inherent worth and dignity not only of their lives but of their grief and of their rage. And I'll just want to say a little bit about that. Sometimes a generalized thing about white folks is that they sometimes want to honor the inherent worth and dignity, meaning that those qualities that we deem positive in people, but to honor the inherent worth and dignity of somebody also means to honor their grief and their rage and their wounds and their suffering, not just their promise and their contributions um, and their those things that we might deem positive, as opposed to looking at the hard stuff. So today we're going to do that. And I want to open with these words from Ibram X. Kendi. This is, I'm not sure if this is from his book or if it's from, let's see. This is from, it's an excerpt of a speech that he delivered at UC Berkeley last September. And this is to invite us as we, I talked a little bit about this in my video message this week, and I think Andrea has spoken about it before, the term anti-racism, and that's something that we really want to, kind of talk a lot about right now. So Ibram said, ironically, Americans who self-identify as not racist, whether they're conservatives, moderates, liberals, radicals, progressives, they don't realize that we are connecting ourselves to a history of slave traders who identified as not racist, although they didn't use that term. We are connecting ourselves to enslavers who said, yes, when we say black people should be enslaved, when we say slavery is a positive good, when we say slavery is a necessary evil, when we say that black people are the cursed descendants of Ham, those are not racist ideas. That's God's law. That's science's law. That's nature. That's logic. When we say I'm not racist, we don't realize we're connecting to Jim Crow segregationalists who said, I'm not racist, it's separate but equal down here. You can't tell it's separate but equal. We're following the law. We're not racist. We're connecting to eugenicists who were really the first group of Americans to be classified as racist, who also turned around and said, this is science. This isn't racism. This is science. We have empirical data to demonstrate that black people are intellectually inferior by nature. Just look at their test scores. And today we have white nationalists. We have white supremacists who self-identify as not racist. We have white supremacists who, before they go into a Walmart in El Paso, Texas, write a manifesto claiming that Latinx immigrants are invading Texas, and then also claiming, I'm not racist. We have this long history of racists classifying themselves as not racists. Racists who cannot imagine that they have been reinforcing notions that there's something wrong with a particular racial group. Racists who can't imagine the policies and policymakers they're supporting are creating and reproducing racial inequity. Fundamentally, racism at its heartbeat has always been denial. And the sound of that heartbeat has always been, I'm not racist. To be more specific, the sound of that heartbeat has been not racist. And so in writing how to be an anti-racist, I've had one singular goal. If I could somehow shape the world, what I would hope would come out of this very book is very simply that we eradicate the term not racist. We eradicate it from the American vocabulary. And then it would force people to recognize that they're either what? Racist or anti-racist. It would force Americans to recognize that all policies are either racist or anti-racist. All ideas are either racist or anti-racist. Then we can truly have an accounting of ourselves, our ideas, our policies, and of our country. Because at some point we're going to have to stop denying that we have metastatic racism. Because if you don't already know, it's literally killing America. It is literally killing this world. The three lethal weapons that are threatening American existence and human existence are, of course, nuclear war, climate change, and bigotry. And so I want to invite you all to do some of that work, discovering what that means, anti-racist. We're going to do some of that today as we listen to people sharing their experiences with us. Before we begin, I'm going to light a chalice, and I've kind of changed my setting here. I was using the chalice from church, but I've decided not to do that for summer. So I do have my own chalice. And I hope that some of you have something at home that you can use as a chalice. This is actually a little dish that I bought at a thrift store. Lots of those old kind of custard dessert footed things make excellent chalices for $1. I have quite a few around the house. So I invite you to light a candle if you have one and join me in the words that are printed in the chat. We light this chalice today in honor of the Unitarian Universalist first principle, to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We recognize that these are not just words to be spoken. Instead, they call us out of our comfort into an ever-deepening commitment. A commitment to make the rights of all whose inherent worth and dignity are denied, diminished, destroyed by systems of oppression. And they call us into the practice of looking into our own hearts with courage and honesty. Dr. Glenn Thomas Rideout is the music director, I should know this, I want to say Portland, that might be right. He's an incredible musician and an incredible music director, and I want to offer this as our opening hymn today. It's his meditation on I Know This Rose Will Open. You can sing along if you like, or you can just listen to Dr. Glenn Thomas Rideout.
I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know, 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 I know. I know, 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 know this rose will open. I know my fear, I know my fear, I know my soul, I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose, I know this rose, I know this rose, I know my fear, I know my fear, I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose, I know this
I looked it up while I was listening. He's the director of worship and music in Ann Arbor. I don't know why I was thinking Portland. Each week we set aside a few minutes to lift up the joys and sorrows of the congregation. I invite you all to use the chat to share things that you would like to lift up today. Happy 6th birthday to Gus. That's the Olson's dog, who gives unconditional love to all. I might mention I have a new worship associate today. I don't know if you can see Pip behind me. Hooray for dogs everywhere. Mark is recovering from shoulder surgery he had 4 days ago. So we wish him well. He's still in a lot of pain, but recovering. Sorrow for the difficult conversations we're having with kids. Yes, Carla. I might recommend those of you that have kids on First Universalist, it's probably on their website. Their DRE, Lauren, she did a message for all ages last week, and that's something that's worth taking a look at.
I just want to let everybody know that I recovered from my eye surgery and I'm not hardly black and blue anymore, so I'm very excited.
I'm going to invite us all into a moment of silence just to honor the joys and sorrows that have been mentioned, and maybe to lift into this space those that you're carrying in your hearts today. So let's just take a moment to hold these and hold what we're carrying as well. Will you all please join in our sung response? The words are printed in the chat. For our centering space this morning, I've chosen a piece that's written and then a video of this person speaking. This is by Tyler Coles. Tyler is a candidate for ministry in the Unitarian Universalist Association, and these are their words in honor and praise to Black Rage.
Deep in the shadow of night, down near the crossroads and cemetery gates, with bitter liquor and cigar smoke wafting, I greet you. Clad in white upon the floor before shrines, following the names of the ancestors being uttered, I greet you. You are the sacred and righteous rage of my people, echoing throughout time from the lands of our elders, from the depths of the ocean, I hear you now. You call out to us in the swirling winds, and the clamoring of lightning, and the crashing of waves, and the flow of rivers, and the rustling of forests, and the clouds that move across the heavens, and the drumbeat of the earth. You are present in the cries of Black Lives Matter and no justice, no peace. You shimmer brightly in the flames of buildings crumbling to the ground as they are consumed in flame. In the calls for protests and direct action, in the stirring of pots, the laughter of children, in the tears and prayers of our guardians. You are Black Rage, holy and sacred, unbound and unapologetic. You swell in the hips and breasts, in the curves of cheekbones and nostrils, in the beats of the heart and pulsating thoughts, in exhaustion, in frustration, in numbness and mobilization, in life. And you name yourself as good. Holy and sacred Black Rage. Be ever present in our struggle for liberation, in our work to be, to love, to exist. Guide our movements in all of their forms as we strive to be good ancestors, ensuring that our descendants might look upon our memory with favor. For you, for them, invite us to live without fear. Dear holy and sacred Black Rage, give life to this valley of dry bones. Move like fire upon our spirits. Stir within us now and forevermore. Ashe, so be it, and amen.
As we open our hearts, continuing to open our hearts, our ears, our minds for Black Rage, I want to introduce this song from Lauryn Hill entitled Black Rage.
Black Rage is founded on 2/3 a person, rapings and beatings and suffering that worsens. Black human packages tied up in strings. Black Rage can come from all these kinds of things. Black Rage is founded on blatant denial, squeeze economics, subsistence survival, deafening silence and social control. Black Rage is founded on wounds in the soul. When the dogs bite, when the bees sing, when I'm feeling sad, I simply remember all these kinds of things, and then I don't feel so bad.
You took my son away from me. You know how hard it was for me to get him to stay in school and graduate.
Black rage is founded, fed us self-hatred, lies and abuse, while we waited and waited. Spiritual trees in this grid and its cages. Black rage is founded on these kinds of things. Black rage is founded on training and training, threatening your freedom to stop you complaining, poisoning your water while they say it's raining. Are you mad for complaining, complaining? Old-time bureaucracy drugging the youth. Black rage is founded on blocking the truth. Murder and crime, compromise and distortion. Sacrifice, sacrifice, who makes this fortune? Greed falsely called progress, such human contortion. Black rage is founded on these kinds of things. When the dogs bite, when the beatings, when I'm feeling sad, I simply remember all these kinds of things, and then I don't feel so bad. Free and surprise, is it myth or illusion? Forcing you back into purpose confusion, like human trafficking or blood transfusion. Black rage is founded on these kinds of things. Victims of violence, folks like me and body. Life out of context is living ungodly. Politics, politics, greed falsely called wealth. Black rage is founded on denial of self.
And why is that doll pretty?
Because he's white and he has 2 eyes.
Which doll is the ugly doll? Why is that doll ugly?
Because he's black.
Doing beatings when I'm feeling sad. I simply remember all these kinds of things, and then I don't feel so bad. So bad.
I think we've got to see that a riot is the language of the unheard.
Reverend Karen Hutt is a friend of mine, a mentor. She's also the Vice President of Student Experience and Culture at United Theological Seminary here in the Twin Cities, and she's an adjunct minister on staff at First Universalist Church in Minneapolis. She also is a great teacher of clinical pastoral education to those folks who are studying to be chaplains. She's not doing that work now, but she has in the past. Last Sunday, she gave this sermon that we're about to listen to, entitled Why Hope, at First Universalist. It's been broadly watched since then, and I know that there are many, many other UU churches across the country that are sharing it with their congregations this morning. And I'm grateful for her permission for people to use it broadly. I do want to make one note. The recording of this, the audio and the video don't sync up well, so it may be troubling to watch. You might want to watch with your eyes closed. You might want to find a spot, your chalice or something else to focus your eyes on, lest you are distracted by the the mismatch. Please open your hearts for these words from Reverend Karen Hutt.
Karen Hutt. I am a minister with First Universalist, and I have never been so proud to be a UU. It's been 25 years this year for me in ministry, and I am grateful to be with all of you. I was born with a heart defect. Doctors were uncertain if they could do such a risky surgery, and a very costly surgery on this little colored girl in 1959. They debated, my parents challenged the hospital, and 2 years later, my life was saved through the surgery. But following my surgery, it was in a largely African-American hospital. They moved that procedure out of the city, making it really inaccessible for Black families. There's no justice. There is no peace. When I was a kid, my great-grandfather, who was born just after the Emancipation Proclamation, told me about his mother who had been enslaved. His mom was a seamstress who freed herself. She needed work, and she got a job sewing Confederate flags during the Civil War. She used the money to buy her relatives out of slavery. Her husband, though, we learned very little about, was murdered by white children for fun. The story goes that they took out his eyeballs for marbles. There is no justice. There is no peace. When I was a kid, my grandfather told me about how proud he was to be a soldier during World War I. He loved the uniform because the women in France thought that he was just the most handsome Negro ever. When he and his best friends came home from the war to Delaware, Maryland area, they were chased by a gang of white men. They caught my Pup-Pup's friend and lynched him. The Pup-Pup hid in some debris until it was safe to escape. At the lynching, hundreds of white adults and children took pictures with his friend's charred body, smiling. And then chunks of his body was distributed to the many that sought them to put in what was called a nigger jar. There was no justice. There was no peace. When I was a teenager, I was a popular, mischievous, smart aleck kid who took lots of risks with the boys. We sat on the chains between the subway cars in Philadelphia, sitting on them while the train was moving 80 miles an hour underground. We jumped on the back of public city buses and held onto the ledge to ride to the next stop. We asked adults to buy us Boone's Farm apple wine at the state store. And the cops would always come on these incidents, and I couldn't run very fast, so I always hid underneath the cars. All the boys were eventually arrested or beaten, at least once by the police in their early years, and many, many, many went to juvie. There is no justice. There is no peace. When I was a young adult, I took a boat to work on an island in the Boston Harbor with Black and white kids from South Boston High School. We were teaching them leadership skills using the ropes course and environmental science as a metaphor so they could go back into their school during the height of racial violence during the busing crisis in Boston in the early 80s. One day, I had to take the late boat back to Dorchester Bay and walk a mile to the Red Line train station. On the way, I was jumped by a gang of whites. I was left semi-conscious on the ground after a brief but painful encounter. There is no justice, and there is no peace. When I was 30, in my 30s, I moved to Chicago, the most segregated city in America. One day I was driving and was pulled over by the police. One day I was driving and pulled over by the police. One day I was driving and pulled over by the police, but a matter of 15 times in 1 year. I was ticketed, harassed, disrespected. There's no justice. There's no peace. When I was in my 40s, I worked at a maximum security prison with thousands of black men, piled like sardines, 7 floors high. I watched guards step on the heads of these men and then drag them down concrete staircases in races on either side of the tier for entertainment. There was no justice and there was no peace. Now, in my 60s, I see my country much the way I see this so-called president, both behaving like insolent children, a ravenous toddler, unable and uninterested in controlling or mitigating raw, historical, racist impulses to conquer and destroy Black life. These eruptions against our humanity can happen at any time and at any place because anti-Blackness and white supremacy are the bedrock of this nation. The slightest tremor can shake the ground beneath our feet, and then that foot of gleeful control steps on our collective necks. This country who hears my pain as white noise, who sees my blood as inconvenient puddles to step over. This country has weathered my Black body with stress and illness. This country whose structures and machinery of injustice continue to create new ways to separate my head from my body. You see, America loves our Black bodies. To throw a ball on a field, to dunk a hoop, to labor in the industries of capital, for sexual fantasies, and the provision of entertainment. But our Black heads, not so much. Our heads that create Black towns after slavery, our heads that innovate and invent, our heads that do complex math, our heads that write novels, our heads who create music and smile and joke with generativity despite the terror, our heads that have figured out how to survive and how to take care of ourselves, our dignified heads that are held high, and most of all, our heads that speak truth to power. For the American anti-Black movement, it is that head of George Floyd, his head with kinky hair, his head with a broad African nose, his head with beautiful full lips, his head with dark brown skin. It is that head that the anti-Black agenda seeks to sever from its body. So white supremacy can feed. You must cut off that head so it can feed on him like zombies feed on brains. The killer cop that kneeled on George Floyd's neck lingered with childish glee. Look at his face. And he's lingering with institutional sanction, thinking that this was okay, that this was acceptable to do. He looks bewildered at all the fuss as he casually keeps his hand in his pocket, just passing the time on a Black man's neck. After all, George was not human. You could not hear the pleas of a non-human. You could not respond to the life being sucked out of a non-human. You can kill him to obliterate breathing Blackness, speaking Blackness, thinking Blackness. The machine of white supremacy is so well oiled not to see or to hear or to feel. It is a cold and calculating gadget with one singular laser-focused objective: to kill me in the most comprehensive and thorough manner. Slowly through policy and infrastructure, or suddenly through the deprivation of oxygen. This machine, with its intricate screws ground into my ancestral body, this machine that has robbed Black people of our liberty and who profited by this theft every hour that we live, have no moral ground on which to stand. It is the humiliated, incarcerated, mutilated, and terrorized Black body that serves as the vestibule for this democratic republic. I love this country. And all my life, I have heard that it's going to take time for America to change. I believed it, and I worked for it. But I have a message to my own childish aspirations today from the Me Too movement. And that message is, time's up. How much time does it take to see us as human? How much time does it take for our pleas to be heard? You know, there's a great relief in saying time's up. It means that something else is going to happen. It means the end of something. It means, now what? What it doesn't mean is hope for something better. It means actions for something better. We are witnessing a shocking accumulation of injured and mutilated Black bodies, particularly young Black bodies. Our Unitarian, Universalist, liberal, and progressive white communities need to ask themselves this question. If our movement is truly progressing towards this, quote, society that is to come, maybe, if we're really moving towards that, why is suffering increasing at such an alarming rate? In response to this inquiry, are you telling your Black siblings that they remain hopeful? Keep struggling? Keep hope alive? Keep faith? I have come to the conclusion that hope is a deadly aspiration for Black people. When we hope, we are still. Hope is a naive conundrum that doesn't inspire action. Being hopeful comes from a place of lack and scarcity. Hope causes us to wait for things to happen to us rather than going out and creating those things for ourselves. While we hope, we continue to suffer. America depends on Black people to wait and hope and pray so white supremacy can continue maintaining and adding to our suffering. My great-grandfather hoped, and he and my family taught that during the uprisings, taught me during the uprisings in 1968, that the political arithmetic of this country wants us to hope while it's saturated with violence. It was founded on looting in the Boston Harbor. It looted the land of the native folks. It looted the shores of Africa that brought me here. It looted the environment. It looted Black communities from their wealth. Thus, nonviolence is a misnomer or somewhat of a ruse. Hope is a Black sacrifice. It is a violence directed towards the self, and it is useless. Political hope has usurped the spiritual principle of hope and puts it in the service of extending oppression. The political hope is bound up with metaphysical violence. And this violence masquerades as a solution to the problem of anti-Blackness. This hopeful, temporal, linear perfection is connected to the tropes of betterment, struggle, work, and utopian multicultural futures. These conceptual instruments of political hope will never obliviate Black suffering or anti-Black violence. These concepts only serve to reproduce the conditions that render our existence unbearable. Political theologians and optimists avoid the immediacy of Black suffering, the horror of anti-Black pulverization, and paint pictures of the, quote, not yet but is, maybe to come soon, maybe the social order will be. Political hope becomes a vicious and abusive cycle of struggle. It's like putting a circle around an idea or an object. The idea might be Black freedom. It might be reparations. It might be justice or relief or reprieve or redress or equality. Putting a circle around it and then making it inaccessible because it doesn't really exist. Those with political hope propose a collective enjoyment as an answer to Black suffering. They point to finding the joy in the struggle, the victory in the toil, and the satisfaction of symbolic action and the singing of songs from enslavement. How repulsive is it that in our very own hymnal, there is a song, "No More Auction Block for Me," white UUs singing about toil and struggle as Black youth are slaughtered daily. Black bodies are incarcerated as forms of capital. Black infant mortality rates are soaring, and hunger is disabling the bodies, minds, and spirits of desperate Black youth. These conditions are deep problems, and singing spirituals does not address the terrifying fact that the world depends on Black death to sustain white life. They depended on my ancestors' death, but I'm here to say time's up again. I'm here to say it for Richard Johnson, my great-grandfather, who said at the end of slavery was just a coffee break. And he went on to create numerous Black businesses, employed much of his community in good jobs. Time's up for Walter Grooms, my pop-up, who, like other Black soldiers, was a war runner across the battlefield who took messages from one battalion to another across explosive areas. He came home to be a union organizer at the Navy Yard. Time's up for Shirley Grooms, my mother, a social worker, and George Hutt, my father, an engineer and politician, who risked everything. They risked everything walking me one day across a racial barrier to enroll me into an all-white school that had the resources they believed I need for my education. My ancestors did not hope and wait. They acted and organized. Friends, go now and try for a day to see what it's like to let go of political hope. Just let it go. Imagine the creation of a spiritual, human, life-centered, life-giving hope that's rooted in the reality of the world we have now, not the one we dream of. Imagine the creation of a spiritual, human, life-centered, life-giving hope that will be built with the Black and white ashes that have been left on Lake Street. Imagine. Blessed be. Amen and Ashe.
Principles. We're doing a series on our principles. Principle, by definition, is an accepted or professed rule of action or conduct. Our principles, our UU principles, are not something that we merely believe in, but they are things that we act out in the world. I'm calling on you all to engage this work, to take a step out of not racist, I'm not racist, and start to discover what it means to be anti-racist. Leave I'm not racist behind. It might mean that you donate money to Black Visions Collective or some other organization, or set yourself up on a monthly stipend for them, which would help them out a lot. It might mean that you divest in things that are upholding those systems of oppression. It might mean, it probably does mean that you do inner work as well, that you pick up some of those books that Andre and I and so many others, if you haven't already, have been talking about, that you pick up How to Be an Anti-Racist or White Fragility or any of the many other books, that you watch some of the films that are being streamed for free right now in this fight, to do the inner work, because you have to do the inner work if you're going to do the outer work. And I know the outer work is complicated now with the pandemic. And I know that some of you are maybe not capable of doing the outside work, and that's fine. There's plenty of work to do. There is plenty of divestment that needs to happen, and plenty of investment that needs to happen, and plenty of inner work that needs to happen, and food drives, and rebuilding, or not even rebuilding, deconstructing systems so that we can construct new systems, whether that's the criminal justice system, the police system, the education system, our banking system, our housing system. This goes far beyond just the police, as we've seen in the news right now, system-wide. So I want to invite you all into that space. And I want to invite you all to take care of each other while you're in that space. Check in with each other, make space for making mistakes. That's why one of the reasons I created that new Facebook group. When you screw up, and you will, we all do, there's a space for you to engage with other folks, a safe space for you to work through your missteps, your curiosity. Because we have to do that too. You don't learn anything without making mistakes, and you certainly don't unlearn anything without making mistakes. So I want to close today with some words from Audre Lorde. And I want to say, yesterday, and I struggle with, I'm going to own up. I struggle with some of the things, right? The abolish the police. I'm like, really? Is that like something we could, like, I don't even know what that looks like or what that means. But I was at a rally yesterday with everybody, and it doesn't mean that we don't have security. It means creating, rethinking the whole idea of protecting one another and serving one another. It means that mental health professionals respond to mental health calls, addiction specialists respond to drug-related calls, housing folks respond to that, domestic abuse folks respond to that, instead of having one agency that is expected to react with aggression a lot of times to all of these instances. Doesn't mean that we wouldn't still have security. It just means that we would have it coming from a place of love and not from a place of punishment and aggression, which is where it often seems to come from, especially for people with brown and black bodies. So as Karen said, just look and think about those things. And don't get caught up in your yeah, but that wouldn't work, because I think that yeah, but that wouldn't work is really similar to saying, but I'm not a racist. So maybe think about what it would look like. I know when we all imagine heaven or some kind of utopia or whatever that is, I don't think we imagine police there. I know I don't. So why? And how can we create that space here? And as we think about creating that space, I want to close with these words from Audre Lorde, who wrote or said, "For the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. They may allow us to temporarily beat him at his own game, but they will never enable us to bring about genuine change. Racism and homophobia are real conditions of our lives in this place and time. I urge each one of us here to reach down into that deep place of knowledge inside yourself and touch that terror and loathing of any difference that lives here. See whose face wears it. Then the personal as the political can begin to illuminate all of our choices." Following the chalice extinguishing and the postlude, I invite, excuse me, I invite those who might like to stay around and chat with others to stay around, and we will make sure to have some chat rooms for you to speak to each other. Will you all please join me in the words for extinguishing our chalice, which are in the chat section. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.